Most people's second brain is a graveyard. You capture everything, you organize it into these nice little folders, and then nothing. It just sits there. You never open it, right? Now, mine is a little bit different. When I open my AI second brain, it already knows what I did yesterday. It knows about my business, my exact offers, my voice, all the things. It also knows which of my AI team members handles what. And every single one of them remembers every session we've ever had. Now, my AI second brain doesn't have this fancy, complex, or complicated tech stack. It's essentially a file-based workspace that's saved in my local computer. In this video, I'm going to show you the whole thing, walk you through the real structure, the actual commands, and some of the few things that it does that a normal Obsidian Vault doesn't. By the way, I'm Hazel June, and I've worked with thought leaders and experts in this space for the past few years. I've redesigned online programs, coached hundreds of business owners, and trained a lot of people on how to leverage AI. In this channel, I usually talk about using AI to run and grow a solo business. Let's get into it. Now, I've built second brains before, multiple ones actually, as you can see here in this Notion page. And unfortunately, I rarely use them. And here's why. First off, when I built these things, Notion doesn't have an AI functionality yet. So they weren't interactive. They just sat there waiting for me to open them. So I would forget they even existed for weeks at a time. Also, everything was scattered across different pages. Now, the real reason, if I'm being honest, which is also kind of embarrassing to admit, is that I kept getting distracted, making it clean and look nice and pretty, new icons, new color-coded system, new databases. And so I got so distracted making it pretty instead of actually using them. So I've lived the graveyard problem myself. And I can't remember exactly when and where I first heard about the concept of a second brain. But I do remember that it was conceptualized by a guy named Tiago Forte. In fact, he has a book about it. Now, his argument is simple. Your brain is for having ideas, not storing them. So he built a method called code, which stands for capture, organize, distill, and express. And then he also came up with the para method, which is all about organizing your folder structure for projects, areas, resources, and archives. Now, check out his website if you want to learn more about these two frameworks. I'm going to link his website in the description below. But in full transparency, I didn't read his book or take any of his courses. I did watch his YouTube videos about it, as well as other videos about building a second brain. I understood the concept of the second brain, and I honestly love it because I love learning and I used to have tons of notes written down on different notebooks or apps. So I love the idea of being able to have a way to store all of those insights outside of my head without me having to remember where I actually put them. Now, looking back at my Notion attempts, capture and organize were never the problem. I was actually pretty decent at them. Express is where every single one of them died. And go watch the wave of AI second brain content that's out right now. And you're going to find out that most people are struggling with the express part of the code process. There's a lot of AI second brain videos out there, and you're going to see a bunch of videos on using Notion, Obsidian, and Claude Code. From the outside, it looks and sounds great. But I think most of the frustration, at least from the things that I have observed, comes from focusing too much on the setup, organizing tags and links, than actually designing something that is useful. Also something that I've done in the past with my Notion second brains. Now, when I built my new AI second brain this year, I designed it differently. I use Obsidian and Claude Code. My second brain is in a filing cabinet that I browse when I feel inspired because I already know what happens to those. It's actually the thing that runs my business. Obsidian is just the window I look through my stuff. Underneath it is my folder based workspace with a bunch of different markdown files. Claude Code reads and writes those exact same files directly, except for one folder where Claude Code is not allowed to write on. But that's for a separate video. In other words, think of my folder-based workspace as my digital HQ, aka the second brain for my business. The place outside my head where I can collect and organize information about my business. Obsidian is just an easier, faster, more user-friendly way for me to view, create, delete, access the files in my workspace. Now, I know a lot of creators who talk about the different features, amazing features of Obsidian. And personally, I don't use those features at all. And that's because I don't have a use for them. So let me show you the whole structure of my AI second brain. Anyway, if you need an AI system that's built specifically on you and your actual business, not a generic template, there is a link to book a call in the description below. Let's talk about what that can look like for you and your business. Okay, first thing, I run a command called /prime, and what that does is make my AI read my last 5 end of day logs, a running session state file, and the latest note from something I call process notes before I've typed a single real question. It already knows what I did yesterday, what's gone stale, what rituals I skipped. Compare that to how most people use ChatGPT or Claude, which is opening a blank chat and re-explaining their whole business from scratch every single time. Now, mine doesn't do that. It even runs something I call a loop guard, which flags when data's gone stale or a ritual got skipped, so I can quietly let something slide without it noticing. I know that's not glamorous, but it's continuity. And continuity is the whole point of a second brain, right? Forte's argument is that the system should hold to the context so your brain doesn't have to. And mine actually does that part. Okay, second thing, I've got 16 sections of what I call my business brain. Now, before I show you what that looks like, let me show you this Obsidian Vault. This is essentially the files organized in Obsidian. Claude Code reads and creates and access the same files that you can see here. And in my Obsidian Vault, I have 16 sections of my business brain. So I got my brand voice, my business foundation, business ops, policies, competitors and positioning, content strategy, and so on and so forth. There's one file that summarizes all 16 called the Business Brain Brief. Now, every AI teammate that I have reads this file before it touches any strategic or content work. Not sometimes, but every time. So here's why that's important. As you can see, I have several team members here, AI team members. They have their individual memory logs based on our conversations, but they don't have their own separate memory of who I am and what my business is. Because if they do, they're going to drift. And so instead of having separate memory for what my business is about, they just have to read this business brain brief. That way they share the same brain. Now, third thing, and this one's a little meta because it's happening in the background of this exact video. Every teammate that I've got, including the one writing the script, which is Chris, has its own memory log. And I've mentioned this earlier. Like, this is Chris's memory log, right? Every session, it writes down what we worked on, what corrections I made, and what patterns keep showing up. And so, for example, before I started writing this, my script writer, Chris, read back through its own memory of the last several sessions we've done together. It knew exactly which sentence structure I would flagged as an AI tell a couple of sessions ago. It knew which CTA applies to what video. I didn't have to teach it twice. Compare that to a normal AI chat, right? You correct the same thing over and over again because the correction dies the second you close the tab. Now, mine doesn't die. It gets written down, filed under the right teammate, like Chris did here for its own memory log. And so that's the actual compounding part of a second brain. Not that it remembers facts, but because it has something to reference to, so it knows what I've already told it not to do. Okay, fourth thing, not everything in a second brain should be words, right? Some of it needs to be numbers, and numbers need somewhere to turn into a verdict, not just sit in a spreadsheet looking pretty. I've got a dashboard built into the same exact folder. So if you look at my Obsidian Vault, I have this pipeline dashboard. It has all of the components required to create this beautiful dashboard right here. And so what it does, it takes the raw numbers, checks them against the targets that I've set, and tells me flatly where I'm broken. So if you look at this, it did say shipped partnerships is what's breaking my funnel. Now that is a second brain doing something that, the original framework was never built for. Not just holding your information, but also computing a judgment out of it and handing you the one thing to go fix. Like what this does. Last thing, and honestly, this is the one that stings the most. Once a week, I run something that pulls my last several end of day logs and compares what I said mattered against what I actually spent my time on. It's not gentle about it either. So if I said outreach was the priority and the logs show 3 days of me tinkering with a dashboard instead, it says so. For example, this is one of my end of week debrief in June. As you notice, it reviewed all of my daily logs, scored me on execution based on my daily activity routines, did my stop, start, continue. And then if you look at this, it also detected several avoidance patterns. And as you can see, some of this really called me out on several things. So it really is not a filing cabinet. It's not a hype man. It's a mirror that calls me on my bullshit or whenever I drift. Kind of like what it did here on this particular end of week debrief. And yeah, some weeks that's uncomfortable for sure, but that's kind of the whole point of building this thing in the first place. I don't want a second brain that just stores what I did. I want one that helps me reflect on my thoughts and actions. If you need help building AI systems like this, one that's actually trained on you, your business, and how your brain works, there's a link in the description below to book a call. And on that call, we can map out what yours could look like. One last thing, if this has been valuable for you, let me know in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell too. I release a new video every week on building AI systems, like that second brain thing that we just talked about. See you in my next video. Ciao!